Well, we can go ahead and begin. Welcome everyone to our webinar on Narratives of Success, a retrospective trajectory analysis of men of color who have succeeded in community college. My name is Luke Wood, and I'll be joined today by my colleague and co-director of M2C3, Frank Harris III. Today, what we're going to do is talk to you a little bit about a project we've been doing that is focused on transfer in community colleges. This webinar is part of our National Consortium on College Men of Color, and we want to first begin by thanking partners of M2C3 who support this national consortium. They include the Community College League of California, the African American Male Education Network and Development, the League for Innovation in the Community College, the American College Personnel Association, Achieving the Dream, Association of Community College Trustees, and the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education. As always, with this webinar, we will be engaged on social media throughout. If you want to sing out and have comments or reflections or want to get some more feedback from us, we hope that you would use the hashtag M2C3, and you can see the Twitter handles for M2C3 at MinorityMaleCCC, and for myself and Dr. Harris at J. Luke Wood and F. Harris III. For those of you who are new to us or are unfamiliar with the consortium, we'd like to take a quick moment to just tell you a little bit about M2C3. The Minority Male Community College Collaborative was founded in 2011 to partner with community colleges to support their capacity in advancing the success of historically underrepresented and underserved mid and post-secondary education, particularly men of color. One of the primary projects of M2C3 is this National Consortium on College Men of Color, where we host regular webinars and information sharing sessions focused on colleges that are part of the consortium to support them in advancing efforts on their campus. We also have products in terms of books and reports that we put out. In the center of your screen, you can see one of our most recent books, the Teaching Men of Color in the Community College, a guidebook. If you're interested in this, you can go to our website to get information or go to Red Shelf, where you can get the e-version of the book. The book is also available in print form. In addition, a large component of the work that we do is based upon assessment. We have a number of instruments that we use that do this. The first is the Community College Survey of Men, which is an institutional level needs assessments tool that's used at a number of colleges throughout the country. In fact, over the past several years, it's been used at over 60 community colleges with 12,000 men. And the instrument is designed to understand the factors that influence their success on each campus. We've done prior webinars that talk about this instrument, so if you're interested in learning more, please go to our webinar archives where you can learn more there. We also have tools such as the Community College Student Success Inventory, the Community College Insights Protocol, our new tool, the Male Program Assessment for College Excellence, which is an outcomes-based assessment tool, and a faculty tool that we've developed called the Community College Instructional Development Inventory. Many of these tools are available for free. If you just send us an email and tell us that you want use of them, we can send you access to the webinars associated with them and the tools for usage. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Harris, who's going to take it from here and engage you in this webinar.
Thank you, Luke. Just picking up where Luke left off, I think it's important for us to at least contextualize our discussion about student success for men of color in community colleges by just highlighting some points that are salient in the published literature on the topic. First and foremost, we know that that men of color tend to be overrepresented in remedial and developmental education courses that do not count for college or degree credit. We know that they are among the least likely to transfer, earn a degree or certificate as well. We also know that men of color report an apprehension to engage in class, primarily because of racial gender stereotypes and poor relationships with faculty members. By and large, stereotypes that portray them as unintelligent or disinterested in learning. And we also know that men of color report encountering hostile classroom and campus environments, which they often attribute to their identities as men of color. And these and other notable trends and disparities really reinforce a need to better understand the experiences of men of color in community colleges, and perhaps more importantly, devise strategies to improve their success in community college and beyond. This quote from Gerlando Jackson and James Moore really highlights a point that we want to make throughout this webinar, is that student success research on men of color is often conducted from a deficit perspective, which can lead many educators to wrongfully assume that men of color do not have what it takes to be successful in college. And while we think it's critically important that we unpack and examine the negative trends and issues such as those that were shared in the previous slide, we think it's equally important to tell stories of success and to find out as much as we can from men of color who've been successful in community colleges, recognizing that it can be particularly instructive both for students and for educators who work with them. So that said, there are two important knowledge gaps that inform the research that we conducted upon which this webinar is based. First, we wanted to make sure that we challenge and reframe approaches to studying men of color, which again are primarily informed by deficit-oriented perspectives and prioritize patterns of failure, disengagement, and their achievement. And because much of the research on men of color in community colleges is quantitative in nature, we thought pursuing these insights qualitatively would bring some much-needed voice to the published literature and research. The conceptual framework that informed this study, first we have Sean Harper's anti-deficit achievement framework, which really underscores the need to, again, challenge deficit-oriented discourse and pursue instructive insights from what he calls achievers, or students who successfully navigated college environments and achieved meaningful post-secondary outcomes. And Dr. Harper strongly advocates this as an approach to redress outcome disparities. And second is the social ecological outcomes model, SEO model, that really underscores all of the work that we do here at M2C3. And the SEO model explores relationships between societal, background-defining, non-cognitive, academic, environmental, and campus ethos factors and their influences on student success outcomes. The research questions that informed the study were phenomenological in nature. So primarily, what meanings do men of color who successfully navigated pathways from community college to four-year institutions ascribe to their experiences and success? We wanted to not only understand the critical factors that were influential in the success of these students, but really to kind of hear from their perspectives how they made meaning and made sense of those experiences. So in doing so, we purposely sought men of color, so students who identified as men of color, who began their post-secondary education careers in community colleges. And we invited each participant to construct what's called a trajectory analysis statement that captured the experiences, strategies, resources, relationships, supports, and other critical factors that enable them to succeed despite systemic barriers that are often faced in education for these students. And to give you a little bit more detail about trajectory analysis, the primary aim of it is to capture the insights and to really get us focused deeply on how, in this case, men of color in community colleges navigated critical moments in their educational journeys and the strategies that they regularly employed to overcome these challenges. So what we asked the students to do was to identify validating agents, which could be family members, faculty members, counselors, student services professionals, and peers, in their pathways, and offer concrete examples of how these individuals contributed to their success. And while we were primarily focused on the participants' lived experiences in community college, we also invited them to recall and share key moments in their K-12, baccalaureate, and post-baccalaureate schooling that could help us understand their experiences. For data analysis, we employed the grounded theory strategies that are discussed by Kathy Sharmas in her book, Constructing Grounded Theory, which essentially entailed a line-by-line coding of each narrative, clustering initial codes into fluid categories based on shared properties and relationships to the central phenomenon, which in this case was what is it like to be a man of color who successfully navigated community college and transferred to a four-year institution. And of course, axle coding, in which we explored the relationships between categories and identified emerging themes which comprise the primary content of this webinar. To give you a little bit of a snapshot of who the participants were, there were 15 who participated in the project, and they represent diverse backgrounds and experiences, which you'll see shortly. Most of them came from low-income backgrounds and were the first in their families to attend college. And you can see that there were 8 undergraduate institutions represented among the 15 participants. This table just, again, also gives you a sense of who the participants were, their name, their ethnicity, where they were from, and what their educational trajectories were at the time in which the project commenced. Again, they were all community college students who transferred to a four-year institution. Many were from low-income communities and were the first in their families to attend college. And we also have to acknowledge that there is an overrepresentation of Black, Mexican-American men, as well as students who were from California. Another point we'd like to make is that, again, while the primary criteria for participating in the project was that you had to begin in community college, be a man of color who began in community college and transferred to a four-year institution, you'll see that all of the participants really, well, many of the participants exceeded that criteria. 7 of the 15 are pursuing post-baccalaureate or have earned post-baccalaureate degrees, which we thought was quite impressive. There are 5 thematic categories that we're going to present that capture the findings, that we're salient across the narratives, and that capture the findings that we're here to share with you today. The first is what I didn't get in high school, which really talks about the experiences that the students had that led them to a community college and prevented them from being able to enroll directly in a four-year institution. Getting on the path to success talks about the impetus or the motivating the factors that motivated the participants to get really serious about school and to get on this path to transfer to a four-year institution. People, not programs, make a difference really talks about the institutional validating agents, primarily counselors, faculty and other educators with whom the participants form meaningful relationships that really had a critical influence on their success. I Am My Brother's Keeper talked about the influence of supportive male peers and their success. And Life at the Big U talks about some of the challenges that the students experienced once they actually transferred to the four-year institution. Our first theme, what I didn't get in high school. In the narratives, the participants discuss their high school academic experiences, and in most cases, they indicated that they did not get the knowledge or academic preparation that they needed to matriculate to a university directly out of high school. Some of the participants acknowledged that they had hoped to attend a university after high school, but found themselves unprepared or underprepared to do so for various reasons. For example, one participant noted that he had received some misleading information from his college counselor, and despite his best efforts, was not admitted to a university. And this was captured in the first quote: "I had dreams of attending a four-year university, and I prepared as such by taking SAT prep courses and AP courses. But with the combination of misleading academic counseling, guidance, and an overall lack of college admission knowledge, I wasn't accepted to any college of choice." Another participant also spoke about not being exposed to college while in school. For this young man, enrolling in community college was a strategy to stay away from trouble in his neighborhood. Quote, I grew up unexposed to the concept of college as it was never spoken to me during my youth. Attending community college was difficult for me because I was not prepared for college-level academic work because of my subpar K-12 education experience, and I lacked the necessary study skills to be successful. Additionally, the college system was foreign to me. I did not know the difference between a community college, a California State University, and a University of California institution prior to enrolling in a community college. Let alone that transferring to a university was an option. I had simply enrolled in community college to avoid the trappings of my neighborhood. And finally, with regard to what students did not get in high school, a third participant in the study indicated that he did not have the drive to pursue or enroll in college after high school, as he was preoccupied with following the path of other Hmong kids in his neighborhood, most of which who did not go to college. Quote, I did not take the ACT and I didn't look into colleges until the summer after graduation. My focus in high school was sports and being a typical Hmong kid. Here in Minnesota, most average Hmong students had little direction in life, either attended community college or the local community college. I was not driven and thought of college to be similar to high school. I thought that all I had to do was show up and get attendance points in order to pass. So we can see that just based on the three quotes that we shared within this theme, that the participants had a number of challenges related to their under-preparation or an overall lack of college knowledge, or a lack of an understanding of the ways in which college could be beneficial to them. And then moving forward in this next theme, getting on the path to success, the participants discussed critical moments in their journeys that ultimately led them to take their educational pursuits more seriously. And for the most part, the participants identifying and committing to a life purpose was the major impetus of their getting on the path to success. And for one participant, discovering a passion for health and fitness motivated him to begin living a healthier lifestyle and pursuing it as a field of study. Quote, I began exercising and self-educating myself on health and fitness. My first accomplishment on this path to becoming a better me was losing over 90 pounds. I started at over 260 pounds and weighed in at 173 pounds. I reverted back for my roots of being a high school athlete and found that my passion was teaching others about the subject which I was so passionate about. And for another participant, his motivation came from realizing that school would provide career options that would lead to a better quality of life and a less physically demanding way to earn a living. Quote, there were countless times I told myself I was going to give up school and thought that maybe I could make a living by being a cage fighter. But I knew I didn't want to take punches to the face for a living, and my face is just too dang pretty for that kind of work. Our third theme, people, not programs, make a difference. And in this regard, the participants shared their experiences in various academic support and retention programs that played a role in their success. However, it was made evident throughout these discussions that the people with whom the participants connected and the relationships that were established are what made these programs special. And this was made evident in the first representative quote, in which the participant noted, although the programs and student organizations were very important in my journey through the community college and university, the people and mentors that have supported me along the way has been the difference in my persistence in earning a higher education. And in some instances, programs provided an opportunity for the participants to establish relationships with professors, which we know is a key indicator of student success for men of color in community colleges. And we see this represented in the second quote on the slide. I developed a close relationship with Dr. B that led me to join her program in my community college in biotechnology. In this program, B kept close tabs on her students enrolled in her program, where she would provide counseling, tutoring, and internship opportunities to her students. Even before transferring to the university, Dr. B had found an internship for me at the school. In the next quote, Stories about community college counselors were also evident in this quote and were evident and salient throughout the narratives. Stories about college knowledge that was imparted by these individuals and instances in which counselors went above and beyond what was expected in an effort to support the participants were also salient. For example, one participant shared the following powerful reflection about the relationship he had established with his community college counselor and the critical support he offered him along the way. A big challenge I had to overcome was my low self-esteem and sense of inadequacy. I had to overcome these feelings and genuinely believe in myself, and the Umoja program and James, the counselor, in particular, guided me through this process. There were many times throughout my college education that I felt I couldn't move on, when I felt I couldn't stand anymore. James was the crutch that held me up. I remember just feeling depressed and not being able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I thought about quitting school and just working full-time like most of my friends. Whenever I felt this way, I would go see James, and he would breathe new life into me. It was his constant validation and belief in me that propelled me forward. Whenever I would sell myself short, he would call me on it. His consistent mentorship has been a godsend. And returning to our earlier discussion about the importance of faculty serving as validating agents, one participant recounted his experience with a highly influential professor who became stricken with cancer and took it upon himself to role model tenacity and perseverance for his students. Well, one day, he, the professor, came into class and told us he had cancer and had 6 months to live. He then said he was going to make sure we passed the course and would finish his semester obligation to teach us. He said, if I can come on time to every class with cancer, then you should be able to make it on time to every class as well. As weeks went by and he became sicker, he would come to class with oxygen tank and oxygen tubes around his face. He would lecture and take a few breaks to catch his breath. A few times we had to help him walk to class. We could tell he was in pain, but he would tell us he was committed to us learning and being successful. He died a few months later. He inspired and amazed me through his dedication to me as a student. And of course, not just faculty and counselors, but in some cases, significant others played a role in providing validation, support, and encouragement to the participants in their journeys from community colleges to the universities they attended. For example, one participant shared, during this time I met my now girlfriend. She came from a family in which attending college was considered normal. Education was very important in her family, while my dad, which abandoned our family to be with his now wife, did not see the importance of investing time and money into a good education. We were taught to go find work in a factory and have a family. And so we could see the participants really captured, the reflections that they shared really captured the critical relationships and the critical moments in which those relationships became important, and in some cases provided the impetus for them to continue and pursue and persevere even during times when they felt like they weren't able to do so. And our fourth theme really talks about the role of supportive peers. And we learned from the study that peers, particularly male peers, played a key role in a participant's educational trajectories. Some participants discussed the ways in which overcoming negative influences and expectations from male peers was a critical hurdle they needed to overcome in order to maximize their educational success. Quote, my high school friends were definitely a hindrance to my community college experience. Every weekend, they would involve themselves in dangerous activities that could have impacted my personal safety. Slowly, I learned how to distance myself from such peers and began to hang out with like-minded people. Others shared stories of positive influences from male peers who were also on the path to transfer to a four-year institution or earn a bachelor's degree. Quote, my new relationship with male peers that I began to develop were my new source of support. It was easier to talk about my future goals and aspirations with these people than it was with my high school friends. My old friends never cared about their future. And having positive male peers was important for students because having some shared goal commitment enabled them to establish relationships with male peers that could prove useful and complementary to their academic goals. And we see this represented in the one quote that's on the slide before you. My peer group also played a role in my success. My experiences in education have taught me to associate with like-minded individuals, people with a similar goal in mind. It taught me to associate with people who complement me and help me to improve in areas that I lack in, as do I the same for them. Because we have similar goals in mind, it was a great support system. And while all of the participants successfully transferred to a university, adjusting to a new institutional context did not come without its challenges. In the narratives, the participants reflected and wrote about having to overcome transfer shock and a host of other issues that made life at the university difficult and, at times, overwhelming. For some participants, staying disciplined, focused, and committed to their new goals was tough, given the newfound freedoms that accompanied university life. As we see here in the first quote, what I had not learned at the community college was how to deal with the new freedom and extra time that I had. In the last 2 quarters of my first year at the university, I became very socially involved, and therefore I lost sight of what my academic goals were upon entering the university. Another participant had to adjust to the competitive ethos of the university environment and recognize that establishing a community of supportive peers would be difficult. Quote, the university environment is more of a competitive one where people who are doing good tend to only want to study by peers of their same academic rank and discard ones who are barely making the class. Throughout my university years, I have not found a reliable group of individuals who would want to study with me due to this competitive environment where everyone is striving to be the best. And finally, for this participant, being less independent and becoming more engaged in campus life at the university were some of the key strategies he employed to ensure his success. Quote, my transition to the academic rigor was rough my first semester, and that's when I learned that I could not be as stubbornly independent as I once was. Study groups became my way to survive courses that were challenging. I chose to live in a residence hall because I wanted that experience and really enjoyed my time there. So overall, we see from the 5 themes and the data that representative quotes that were presented is that these participants began their educational journeys with some sort of challenge that stemmed from their K through 12 experiences, being underprepared, not having the knowledge that it took to enroll immediately into a university. There was some impetus and some motivating factor that got them on the path to academic success and got them on the path to transfer. Their journeys were made possible by a host of important, influential relationships with faculty, with counselors, and with male peers. And we also find that they had to sort of reorient or recalibrate their experiences and recalibrate the way in which they approached their learning once they transitioned to the 4A institution, which was much more competitive, in which they had more freedoms and responsibilities than with the experience at the community college. So that said, there are several implications for practice that we think are important to highlight, and important lessons learned that you should be mindful of in your work with men of color. First and foremost, we think it's important to incorporate success stories like the ones in which we shared here in the webinar, into professional development activities for faculty and staff. And in doing so, really focus on professional development on building trust, rapport, and positive relationships with men of color. And as we see evident, this issue of relationships consistently emerged throughout the narratives as really critical and really important for these students. We also think it's important to ensure that the elements that facilitate student success are embedded in the campus ethos at the community college. So making sure that there's adequate college knowledge about the different university options and the process in which students have to follow in order to transfer successfully to a 4-year institution, be it at a transfer center or in some sort of support program, or ideally it's embedded into courses and other experiences in which students that are already built into the typical student experience. And institutional agents as well, so making sure that there's a critical mass of institutional agents who touch upon this, who students can reach out to and who are there to provide those messages of validations, insights, and support for students. We also think it's critically important that we continue to challenge deficit sense-making and redress disparities from what Estella Ben Simone calls an equity-minded perspective. So again, it's not about blaming the student. It's not about using student deficits as a way to absolve one's responsibility of making sure that students are successful. So we have to really kind of rethink the ways in which we make sense of these problems and disparities, which in turn have some influence on how we approach them and the strategies that we employ in order to redress them. Next, creating opportunities for men of color to build community and capitalize on interactions with supportive peers is also important. You may recall that these students talked about supportive male peers and the role in which they played in their success. So we think having organic opportunities for those types of relationships to form and be fostered is also important for these students. And finally, support men of color who are nearing transfer to develop the skills and competencies that are critical for success at four-year institutions to ensure that they continue to be successful upon transfer. So talking about how can they engage in educationally purposeful involvement activities and not just take on anything for no strategic reason at all. Talking about the time management strategies that they're going to have in place at the four-year, which may be different from what they've had to do in order to be successful at the community college. And really preparing them to go into this fiercely competitive environment, which at the community, at four-year institutions tend to permeate the experiences of these students. That said, we want to thank you for joining us at the webinar, and I'm going to invite Luke to come up and talk about our next webinar and to send us off. So again, thank you.
We'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and would like to invite you to take a look at the advisory board members that we have listed here. We just want to, as always, thank them for the incredible support that they provide us in being able to execute this, the efforts that we take here at M2C3. In terms of upcoming webinars, we have a very robust schedule set for this year. We will send the schedule out to all those who participated in today's webinar, as we've been making updates since you probably have seen it last, if you've seen it. But just to give you kind of a sample of some of the topics that you will see this upcoming semester, we will be doing either monthly webinar or information sharing session between now and over the next academic year. So we'll be doing one on community college trustees and how to advance success for men of color. We'll be doing an information sharing session that's focused on programs that are successful in advancing outcomes for men of color. We're going to do one that's called a research update, where we're going to talk about what we know from the past 20 years of research on men of color and how we can use the information derived from this research to design programs, policies, and practices that advance success for these men. In November, we'll be doing a webinar that's focused on veteran men of color and talking about how we can best support these men on our campus, as they represent a large contingent of the veteran population. Also in November, we'll be doing another webinar that's focused on mentoring. We know that mentoring has long been used as one of the primary strategies and interventions for men of color. And one of the things we want to talk about are best practices and promising practices for constructing mentoring programs. And we'll be doing that in two parts. One will be the webinar itself, which will be co-hosted by Dwayne Reed from the Baltimore City Community College, and then a subsequent information sharing session, which will be hosted by one of our key partners. In addition, we'll be also doing webinars talking about early alert systems, retention strategies that account for masculine identities, student athletes who are men of color, and microaggressions. So lots of great topics that we have that are coming up, and we hope that you will be joining us for those. Right now, what we'd like to do is just take a few moments, and if you have any questions, you can either feel free to tweet them out using the hashtag M2C3, or post them in the chat window, which we can see, and we'll take maybe just a couple questions, and then we'll close it off for today. We'd also like to acknowledge that the American Association of Community Colleges has a representative today that is on the webinar, and they have provided M2C3 with a letter of support for the efforts that are being taken here in support of college men of color, so we'd like to just thank them for their support.
in that endeavor. And again, at this time, we'll be happy to respond to a few questions.